Welcome back, guys. So, about a week ago, I was watching a video of the Happy Console Gamer, and he was talking about the Sega Genesis, and sort of giving his history with the console and telling us about some memories of certain games that he really loved playing back in the day. And it really resonated with me, so I thought I would do a response video, and this is my first one ever, and just sort of talk a little bit about one of my favorite consoles, what it means to me, and some memories that I have. So in order to do so, I've got my authentic Southern style sweet tea here, and we're going to transport back to a small town in North Carolina in the early 90s and talk about the Sega Genesis. So hope you enjoy. So here it is, the Sega Genesis. Now this is the Model 2, and I realize that a lot of people, sort of talk trash about this one being the sort of the redheaded stepchild of the Genesis family. This is kind of the ugly one compared to the Model 1, and I do agree the Model 1 is much nicer looking. But this was my Genesis back in the day, and so I have a certain attachment to it and a fondness for it just because this was mine, and this is the one that I played games on and still works so well. So, I had the original Nintendo back in the day, and there were a lot of great games for it. There were also a lot of really terrible games for it. And unfortunately, I ended up with some of those just because of some of the things I was interested in as a kid, like Friday the 13th, wrestling. So there were a couple of good wrestling games on the Nintendo, but WrestleMania, one of the first wrestling games, was really terrible. At any rate, and I kind of got frustrated with the Nintendo because my Nintendo, like most people's Nintendos, the pins, I'm assuming, just got bent pretty quickly. And so it never worked. I just could never get it to work, and so finally I just sort of gave up on it, I think. And so in, I think, maybe 92, I believe it was, I got my Sega Genesis, and I realize that's kind of late in the lifespan, but I got one nonetheless, and of course I spent lots of time playing Sonic 2, which was the pack-in game at the time, and lots of other fun games too. Now later, I actually purchased a 32X myself. This is the only, of course I bought a game or two myself when I was a kid, but for the most part I didn't really buy any of that for myself because I didn't have any money, of course. But the 32X was the first, real piece of hardware that I bought on my own, and, I absolutely loved it, to be perfectly honest. I put it on layaway and saved up my money, and I finally got it. And I had a lot of fun with it. I know it's a very maligned console now, and not without reason. But I had a great time with it. So let's look at some of the games. So the first thing we got to talk about are the fighting games. Now it seemed like back in the early to mid 90s, everyone was playing fighting games. And the big question, I guess, was: are you a Street Fighter or a Mortal Kombat guy? And to be honest, I love both of those games. I did back in the day, and I don't think I really preferred one over the other. It's kind of funny how I came to fighting games. They were really popular, and at the time, I had some sort of maybe personal confidence issues. I was sort of the token fat kid. And so it was cool for me to discover that I was actually really good at these games. And I don't play fighting games a whole lot these days, but back then I played them all the time. And of course practice certainly helps when you're trying to get better at these sorts of games. But I found I had a natural ability for it, and I really kind of enjoyed the sort of empowerment that you got. For the first time, I'm hanging out with all the neighborhood kids, and I am just kicking everybody's ass. And it was a lot of fun, and that's where I learned to trash talk and all that sort of thing. And we had a lot of fun. And the one thing though that I always felt was really too bad about all of it is everyone got so caught up in Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter that there was another incredible game on the Genesis, a fighting game that I think everyone forgot about, which is this one right here, Eternal Champions. And this was honestly, I don't know that I would say that I liked it more than the Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter games. But I really loved this game, and I thought it was a great fighter. I still think that for some reason it's sort of overshadowed by the other two. But I love it. I still love it. I think it's a great game. So, yeah, definitely leave a comment if any of you guys love this game too, because I have always wondered if it's only me that really loved that game. So next I wanted to go over a quick assortment of some of my other favorite games for the Genesis, and to be honest with you, I had a really, really hard time picking games out. I went over to my shelf and started pulling Genesis games down, and the next thing I knew I had this huge armload of games because it's just really hard to narrow these down. The first one I played incessantly back in the day, and that is Road Rash 2. And of course this was tons of fun, riding motorcycles, whipping people with chains, fun for the whole family. And if you've got the special code to get the black bike, then, no worries until you hit a tree or something. The next game is one that, I don't think a whole lot of people know about, but this is Crew Ball. And yes, this is Motley Crue Pinball. And surprisingly enough, it is actually a really good pinball game. There's also, different renditions of popular Motley Crue songs from back in the day. I wasn't always the biggest Motley Crue fan, but the renditions are really hilarious, on the Genesis sound chip. But the actual Motley Crue songs are not in the game itself. It's got its own music. But it's a very cool pinball game, lots of, sort of very metal-themed pinball tables, and I really like it. It is kind of difficult, though, but definitely recommend that one. The next one that I played, one of the late entries in the Genesis library, Vector Man. Very, very cool platformer, very unique for its time. There were so many platformers back in the 90s that it was really easy to get lost kind of in the fold. But I think Vector Man was great in sort of differentiating itself from the rest of them. Now the next one is a little run and gun. It was the first game released by Treasure, one of my favorite developers. I'm actually going to do a multi-part series where I review almost all of their games, so stay tuned for that one. But Gunstar Heroes is probably, it ranks up there with one of my favorite Genesis games of all time. It's just incredible run and gun action. You build your own weapons, you choose your own path. It turns into a side-scrolling shooter at one point. Just incredible game and lots of fun. You play 2 players, so it's a really good time. The next one I've got down here, which actually doesn't work on this machine since this is an NTSC machine, but this is Alien Soldier. This is another incredible Treasure game, and again, there's not really so much in the way of stages. Each stage is incredibly short, and then there are just some really crazy boss battles in this one. So another great game, and one that I'll be reviewing soon. One more run and gun I wanted to mention. Unfortunately, I don't have a case or a manual for this one, but this is Contra Hardcore. And this is part of the Contra series, so it's a very well-known, well-respected run and gun series. And I think this version on the Genesis is incredible. Multiple pathways, great music, great visuals, and just incredibly brutal gameplay. And some people, I think, have complained that this one is too difficult. Honestly, maybe it is too difficult, if you're a pussy, but I think it's, regardless, it's a great game and definitely worth having in your Genesis collection. And next up, no discussion of the Genesis would be complete without talking about the Sonic games. Now, I was a huge Sonic fan back in the day. This copy of Sonic 2 was the one I got with my Genesis, and I don't even know how much time I spent with this, but, I still love it. I could still sing probably every tune in the whole thing, and do sometimes. And I think it's an incredible game. Later on, I played Sonic 1. One of my friends up the street actually had the Model 1 Genesis, and it came with Sonic 1. So I got lots of time in on this one too. Now, I didn't play Sonic 3 a whole lot back in the day, but I did play Sonic and Knuckles a ton, and I really loved this installment of the game too. And the final game I want to talk about in sort of the Sonic series here that I had when I was younger is Knuckles Chaotix for the 32X. And this was one of the games that I got with the 32X, and I really loved it. I liked the mechanic of the sort of rubber band ring thing, and I thought it looked incredible, and great soundtrack again. So I thought this was just a lot of fun. And that brings me to my last and slightly controversial bit, which is talking about just a few 32X games. Now, I know technically I shouldn't be talking about these, since the 32X is usually thought of differently than the Genesis itself. Same with the Sega CD. But I did have this back in the day, and it was, I think, an integral part of my love for the Genesis. So I just want to talk about a couple of the titles. The first one is Virtua Fighter. This is one of the ones I got with the 32X. And honestly, I thought that this was a great port back in the day. I still think it's a great port. I think it's better than the original Saturn port, not the remix, of course, but the original Saturn port of Virtua Fighter. And it was good practice, because years later I actually was in Cincinnati with my closest friend in the world, and we were with his godparents at this arcade. And at that time, I hadn't played video games in years. I had been out of the scene, and I just hadn't played games in forever. So we were in this arcade, and we're walking around, and I'm sort of like, nah, I don't want to play anything. It'll be cool. I'll just watch. And so we come across a Virtua Fighter cabinet, and he's like, hey, let's play Virtua Fighter. This is from back in the day. You played this, right? And I was like, yeah, I played it. And I didn't really want to play, and he just kept after me and talking trash. And so finally, I agreed to play, and I just shamed him in front of his godparents. And it was hilarious. We had so much fun, and we still laugh about it to this day, how he talked so much trash and then was destroyed. So anyway, the next game I want to talk about is the Doom port on the 32X. And I know, again, this was kind of controversial. The sound is not like the original PC version of Doom. And, to be honest, who cares? I think it's effective for the game. While the PC version may sound better, I suppose, I think this is, of the console ports, I think this is one of the most playable. It runs nice and smoothly. It's very playable. It's missing some levels, though. But, pretty much all of the console ports were missing levels. So, regardless, I think it's a good port. I had a lot of fun with it. Unfortunately, the 32X logo is printed upside down on the box. I don't know why they did that, but anyway. Also, don't forget Space Harrier. I think this is one of the best ports of Space Harrier. Part of the reason for that is one of the big improvements introduced by the 32X was sprite scaling. And it was really similar to the Sega System 16 arcade hardware, which is what this game Space Harrier was on. So really, I mean, these systems were made for each other. The next one is one of the newer ones that I picked up, which is Blackthorn. This is probably one I'll review soon enough. But this was the first game released under the Blizzard banner, and it's really awesome. It's kind of like a sort of puzzle oriented, sort of action oriented, sort of Prince of Persia oriented. Great game nonetheless. And finally, Tempo, another little platformer that I got recently. Recently meaning, a few years back, but not back when I originally had this. And this is just a really awesome little platformer, kind of funky music, and a lot of fun. So I was trying to think of a way to end this long and rambling video, provided any of you are still watching it. And I thought maybe I would just tell you about sort of how I got out of video games and then back in. Now, I already said, I think, that this was the last console that I had when I was a kid. Now, I really wanted the Sega Saturn. I wanted one so bad. I saw commercials with Knights, with Daytona USA. They looked incredible. And so when my parents found out that it was $3.99, they were like, yeah, right. There's no way. So they told me I could get a job and buy one myself. And I was only 13 at the time, but I did get a job illegally. And I was making $4.50 an hour washing dishes at a sink that was about as tall as this table. And after, I guess, maybe a month doing that, I just decided the Saturn was too much. There's no way I was going to spend that much money. So I got out of gaming for a long time, but I never got rid of my Genesis. And even when I moved to college and then eventually moved out to Vegas, I took the Genesis with me. And I don't even know why, because I never really played it on my own. But it seemed like, and at the time, I had this big TV cabinet thing, and it was sort of in this behind these doors at the bottom, where no one would ever see it. But for some reason, it seemed like every time I had a party, someone found the Genesis. And the next thing you know, we're running around Green Hill, or we're kicking each other's ass in Street Fighter and talking trash, or just having a lot of fun. And it's it was really a lot of fun for everyone. And it actually was the reason I decided to maybe sort of come back to gaming a little bit. And and I still love it to this day. It's one of my favorite consoles ever. And yeah, I guess that's about all I have to say at this particular moment. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.